What's good, everybody? This is Emerald Knight Leon back with another deck analysis. And today, I just got back from a tournament, and I was able to get first place with D-Brigade today. And that just makes me happy, really, because D-Brigade will always be a deck that I'll always turn back to and find ways, of making it work for this set. And, while we did get quite a lot of support for D-Brigade in this set, definitely, once we're not going to be getting much support until BT12, and I am excited for running that iteration of it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about D-Brigade as of right now during EX3. And I do have two variations of this deck, because the deck that I ran, I do have Death X, and Death X, I am aware, is a very expensive card. If people didn't want to buy it, I understand. I did make a version of this list that basically changes around the numbers of some of your Digimon to accommodate for the lack of Death X. And we'll go into that in just a bit. But for right now, let's start with our Digi-Eggs. We're running 4 copies of the new Missimon and 1 copy of Sumimon. Now, Missimon is a card that we have needed so badly for D-Brigade. Essentially, what the old Missimon did was it gave you plus 1,000. It's why no one ran it. Everybody was running Sumimon. Because if you had 2 D-Brigades out, the one on top of the Sumimon is going to get plus 2,000 instead. Commonly, people would use that with this Commandramon, essentially bumping it to 7,000 just for early aggression while you're sacking off everything else. But what the new Missimon does is, during your opponent's turn, while you have another Digimon with D-Brigade in its traits in the play, this Digimon gains Reboot, which is amazing, because that means you can pass turn after swinging with, say, this Commandramon, or even a blocker Commandramon. If it somehow survived the security check, it will gain Reboot so it can become a blocker again. For our rookies, we are running a lot of D-Brigades. We're running 4 copies of BT3's Commandramon, where it is a 2 cost. I will always love the 2 cost. It's great for early choking if your opponent doesn't have a memory fixer in play, and it just can be a good, hard 2 drop, and it's just really nice to have. It's a 3,000 DP. It can swing over a few things, but, more often than not, it will die eventually, and that's nice. That's what we want. We are also running 4 copies of BT4's Commandramon, which is a must. You need to run 4 of these, because that on deletion is crucial for getting your swarm ready. The whole point of this deck is swarming the opponent. Basically just sending as many bodies into them as possible. And with this Commandramon's on deletion, letting you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can play a Commandramon for free. That's very good to have. It can let you play the 2 cost. It can let you play our blocker. It can let us play this 5k one, and then it can let us even play our new copy of the Commandramon from EX3, which is very useful to have in this deck. And it can be actually now comboed with the inherited effect of Sealdramon, which we'll talk about in a bit. What we are also running here is 3 copies of BT5's Commandramon. Now, this is the blocker Commandramon. There's nothing more to be said, really. It's the kind of Commandramon you want to put into your raising, though. Mainly because it is a 4-drop. So unless your opponent doesn't have a memory fixer, but they put you to 3, then you wouldn't really want to drop it. And the same can be said for the starter deck 5 Commandramon as well. But on to our new Commandramon. This is the new EX3 Commandramon. It has Decoy D-Brigade traits. So what this will do now is, when one of your other Digimon with D-Brigade and its traits would be deleted by an opponent's effect, you may delete this Digimon to prevent that deletion. Now, here's the thing though. If that effect happens to be a DP reduction, that's not going to change the deletion of the initial target. Because after you sack off this Commandramon through its decoy, that Digimon that was targeted is still going to have 0 DP, so it's still going to die. So that's just a warning for people who don't really know about that. It's definitely something to keep in mind when you're deciding whether or not you need to sack off this Commandramon for its decoy effect. Going into our level 4s, we're only running 7 level 4s, really, because you still want to run the majority of your Digimon is going to be Commandramon. But we are running 4 copies of the new Seals Dramon. This Digimon, he has jamming, which is great. Great for early aggression. If you're trying to kill him off, though, that's going to be hard unless you swing into one of your opponent's Digimon. But what we love about this card is it's inherited. Once per turn, your turn, when you play another Digimon with D-Brigade and its traits, it gains Rush. So if you already are in your level 6, or you're already in your level 5 even, and you just hard drop this Commandramon here, it automatically will gain Rush if it was the first one to be played that turn, and you can then swing, hopefully get another thing. That new Digimon, unless you have another Seals Dramon with its inherited in effect, won't be able to gain Rush, but it still lets you have extra aggression. We'll also be running 3 copies of Grumblemon. Now, this is mainly because we do run 6 Tamers. So having that extra, Digivolution is nice. And also, it can come in handy if you're not able to get your Seals Dramon in your hand early on, but you have a Grumble. You can easily just Digivolve into it in your raising. It's fine. If you really wanted to, you could swap out the Grumble, maybe take 2 of them out, put it to 1, and tech in 2 copies of the old Seals Dramon if you wanted, which is always an option, if you wanted the more D-Brigades, but I feel like we have a lot of D-Brigades as is. Like, out of all of our Digimon here, there are only 2 cards here that aren't D-Brigade, and that's Grumble and Death X. Everything else is D-Brigade. So, if you feel like you need the extra D-Brigades, sure. Now, into our level 5s, though, this is where you need to run more than 4. And I say this because if you're running this Dark Dramon primarily as the majority of your level 6s, you need to have 4 copies of this Tank Dramon from EX3. You need to. That's non-negotiable. You need to have it because it's when Digivolving is crucial, because it lets you trash 2 of your 3 cards that don't get played off of its effect. And those can be D-Brigade, which is great. Speaking of his when Digivolving, it lets you reveal top 3 of your deck, and then you can play a Digimon with D-Brigade and its traits and a play cost of 5 or less. So that lets you play any of your Commandramons or Seals Dramon here. But you need to run 4 of this if you're running this Dark Dramon at a 3 or more. If you're running this more than the EX3 one, you might be able to fudge around with the numbers there, but otherwise this needs to be F4. I hate saying that this needs to be F4, but it really does. It's inherited. It's also a great card if you're, swinging in with this Dark Dramon, because it's inherited lets you reveal the top 2 cards of your deck when one of your Digimon with D-Brigade and its traits attacks. You may play 1 Commandramon among them without paying its play cost. Trash the rest. So it sets you up for more Dark Dramons, and that is crucial. But because of this, we are running 2 copies of the old BT4 Tank Dramon. Will you Digivolve into this? Probably not, but it does let you get into your Dark Dramon early on if you're not able to draw your EX3 Tank Dramon. And it does have a nice effect if you're trying to fish for your Dark Dramon, or you're just going in all in with the attack and aggression. You can proc Seals Dramon's Rush off of this because of its effect. When one of your other Digimon with D-Brigade and its type or traits is deleted, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. You may play 1 Commandramon among them without paying its memory cost. Place the rest of remaining cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. So it gets you a free Commandramon that gains Rush off of the Seals Dramon just by sacking this. And better yet, if this is the card that's attacking, that can potentially get you 2 Commandramons for the price of 1. Now, for our level 6s, we are running 5 level 6s. If you're not running Death X, you can bump these up the Death X is really here as a safety insurance, really, in the event that you're running against one of your poorer matchups, which in my opinion is Blue Flare, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But because we're primarily running the EX3, this is the one that's going to be run at 3. Its effect is the inverted version of the old Darkdramon. When you would Digivolve into this card, you may return up to 5 cards with D-Brigade in their traits from your trash to the top of your deck to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1 for each card returned this way. Now, a little thing that I like to think about with this is it really is the inverted version of this. And I say it like this. So, with Darkdramon, the memory counter isn't moving. So you could Digivolve into this if you're at 2 memory. You could Digivolve into this at 1 memory. The memory counter does not move until you place the cards back into your deck at the top of your deck, and then it's reduced, and then the cost is put into the memory. Whereas with, let's say, BT Forged Darkdramon, the cost occurs first, where if you play it, it's 13, so you need to be at 3. So it goes to 10 on your opponent's side. And then you put the cards back into your deck, and then you gain the memory. So the BT4 is basically play, cards back in deck, memory gauge moves. Whereas Darkdras is cards back, Digivolve, cards back in deck, then memory gauge moves. But the difference being that you need to be at 3 minimum for this, and you don't need to be at 3 minimum for this. Now, this Darkdramon has Rush, so ideally you need to be at 3 anyways, just to be able to play it, to get that Rush going. And that's really kind of it for it. It's a very simple card. It goes in. That's all it does. It does its job, and it does its job well. For our level 7s, we are running 2 Death X's. Now, we're just running 2 of these simply for the matchups that kind of screw us over a lot. And I was talking about Blue Flare. Let me explain why Blue Flare is probably the worst matchup that a D-Brigade player could go against. Simple. It stuns all of your things. The whole premise of D-Brigade is to swarm your field in order to just bombard your opponent with attack after attack after attack. But all of the Blue Flare's effects require your opponent to have 2 or more Digimon in play, which is a near guarantee if they're running D-Brigade. So what's going to happen is you're going to have like 4 or 5 Digimon out. They're not going to have any evolution sources under it because they were played by FX. They're going to go into their Metal Greymon for the 3 cost and then stun 3 of your Digimon, swing, stun the 4th one, unsuspend. And if they have a lot of memory, then they can just play another Metal Greymon or Digivolve into Decker Greymon in order to stun the 5th card, making it just impossible for you to attack that turn, unless you had something in raising. Do you see the issue here? And it was an uphill battle for me in the recent tournament that I got first place in. It was just, I had to get lucky. I had to get lucky that my opponent didn't get their Metal Greymons, or when they swung into my security, it hits Iron Fist Onslaught or Ultimate Flare. I had to get lucky. Not once was a Death X in my security, and not once was I able to draw Death X that game, because they kept their, the amount of stuff they had on field to a minimum, so I wouldn't have been able to play it reasonably without giving them a ton of memory. And it's just, they were able to play around that, but it was through pure luck that I was able to pull through. But I like having the Death X because it is a good countermeasure. It will stall the game, essentially. And they'd have to, in order to save their things, they would have to go into a Metal Greymon and then go into a Decker Greymon just so they can armor purge the Decker to keep their Metal Greymon alive. That's what they would have to do. And by that point, you might be able to have the aggression to win if you play Death X that way. For our option cards, we are running a 3-2-3. Now, I love Pride Memory Boost. I love it. I feel Pride Memory Boost is great. I never showed the deck, honestly, and I kind of regret it. But in the San Diego Regional, I did get 23rd place with a D-Brigade deck that ran none of the common stuff you saw in the D-Brigade lists at the time. It was running 4 Nanimons, 3 Death X's, and a single Omnimon Zord. And the whole premise of that was you're going to use Pride Memory Boost because you're not running the only card that has more a higher play cost than 4 is going to be your Grumble, your Death X, and your Darktra, and the Omnimon's Ward. And because of that, you'd be able to summon everything, including your Mechanoris, to stonewall your opponent throughout that time. And if you weren't able to get the win in the turn that you go into Darktra, you could go into a Omnimon's Zwart, trash cards, and then respawn 2 Mechanoris to just continue stonewalling your opponent. And it worked. It worked amazingly, actually. Of that regional, I only lost twice. The first was actually in the first round, and it was against a red-yellow hybrid recovery deck of Rise Greymon. And then the second was the second to last round where I lost to a Metal Garurumon deck. I won every other round after that, but in between that and even the last round. But because of that, I wasn't able to get into the top 16. But that's fine. I made peace with that. I proved that, my D-Brigade deck was really useful and it could work. And that's what it meant for me. But I will always love Pride Memory Boost. And I'm still on the fence about running black. Because the thing with Pride is it does fill your trash with, your D-Brigades, which is great. But black also can just keep certain cards from going into the trash. And I'm talking about Tankdramons and your Darktramons. Yes, you could get Darkdra Loop, which is a thing you can do. But the problem is, since you're running the Death X's, you only have 5 Darktramons. I'd feel more comfortable using Pride Memory Boost in this iteration because you're running the full 6 Darktramons here. And if you really wanted, you could take something out, put Kazu to 3, or put, Grumble to 2, and just add a third Darktramon over here from BT4, and just then start Darkdra looping that way. Aside from the Black Memory Boost, we are running 3 copies of Ultimate Flare. I prefer running more Ultimate Flares than Iron Fist Onslaughts, simply because Material Save is an effect that, sure, Iron Fisted Onslaught can, stop that. It can kill it, but they can Material Save, and they can't do that very easily with Ultimate Flare, basically only allowing them to save one thing, which is, very nice. Iron Fist Onslaught will delete the opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost. Nothing needs to be said about that. Ultimate Flare, D-Digivolve 3, and then delete all of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 3 or less. Finally, we are running 2 copies of Izzy. We run Izzy because he can basically become a 3 cost, because everything here is black, which is nice. And we also run 4 copies of Kazu, just because we're going to, 9 times out of 10, have one of these things out. It's going to give us an extra memory, and we can actually just further facilitate milling cards into our D-Brigade cards into our trash through his effect. Now, moving things around, what I did on the recipe that doesn't have Death X is, as you can see, for the rookies, it's a 4-4-3-3-2. Now, how I did this is because we are essentially, taking out the 2 Death X's, it becomes a 4-4-3-3-3. Or if we really wanted to, we could keep make these be a 3-3 for our Darktras, or a 2-4 for our Darktras. That's just what I did in order to compensate for that. And that's really all you need to do. If you really wanted to tech cards in, there aren't as many options because it's pretty much running all D-Brigade. For context, this is the old Missymon. It only gives you 1,000 DP. Not really useful in my opinion. if you don't have Sumamon for some reason, run Pagumon. Pagumon is great for searching your deck, especially if you're having it under the searching Commandramon here. Pagumon is the one card I would say, yes, you can Digivolve your search Commandramon into that, over that, because it just lets you search your deck using Pagu's effect, and then it can help move your deck around so that you have a better chance of getting a Commandramon when you proc the Commandramon effect. For rookies, Chumon and Chikurimon are really the best ones I feel. You could run the old Chikurimon, sure, but because we need so many D-Brigade cards, these are probably the better cards to run. Chikurimon here is mainly good for preventing your opponent from Digicrossing and then playing Death X, whereas Chumon here is good for preventing them from gaining memory off of anything but their tamers. So if they're running memory boost cards, like Blue Flare runs 4 of the blazing memory boosts, they can't use that memory boost because of Chumon. For level 4s, really the only options are going to be Mechanori, in my opinion, just because he has the capability of taking the hit, surviving, and then restanding, and just working that way. Or you could run maybe a few copies of the BT4 Sealed Dramon, which is also a blocker. For option cards, Congo is definitely something I always would recommend if you're playing a bit more cautiously. We talked about Pride Memory Boost. And then also, I would recommend maybe Defense Plugin C. Specifically because its security effect is very nice. It lets you reveal top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can play a Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less among them, and then place the rest at the bottom, and then add this card to your hand. So it can get you a free Digimon out into play. For Tamers, if you're running a lot of Mechanoris, I do recommend Taikamiya. Mainly because his effect of increasing all of your black Digimon's DP by 1,000 during your opponent's turn. If you're running 2 Taikamiyas, you can basically make Mechanori an 8,000 blocker, which is great. Otherwise, Izzy and Joe, just because sometimes your opponent's going to swarm their field as well, so you can maximize your memory gain off of that. And then if you're working on a more mill-focused deck, Analog Youth is the way to go, because he lets you trash the remaining cards out of the 3 you draw. You reveal. And then since you are running Tank Dramons now, you can use his effect to basically gain a memory and hatch a Digi-Egg if your Tankdra or Darkdra dies. That is it for this deck analysis. I love D-Brigade. I've said that again before. I'll say it again. D-Brigade is probably one of my favorite archetypes. And, it just makes me happy to play it. It's a deck that I know by heart. I know how it goes. I know the beats it has to go through in order to achieve victory. And it's just a fun deck, really, to play. It's a deck I would say is great for people who want to learn the game. Because it just teaches you, the blocker mechanic. It now will teach you decoys. It teaches you jamming now. It teaches you rush. It teaches you, revealing effects that reveal cards and mill cards. It teaches you, reducing and gaining memory now. It's just a deck that can teach a lot of different mechanics at this point. And anybody who wants to play this game, I would recommend D-Brigade. It's a fairly cheap deck. You can, outside of Death X and maybe Izzy, which you could get easily just by getting the newer starter decks that are out now, you don't need to pay a lot of money for this. And it makes it very affordable. But yeah. Now, if the only reason it would be more expensive is if you got these specific types of Commandramons, that are expensive. They're only here because of just, if we really wanted, we could just change that out, bring it over. Let's see, bring it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And yeah, there. And honestly, that just shows, though, that the majority of how much this deck is worth is actually from the Death X. Just Death X is so expensive. But that is it for this video. I will leave a like, comment, tell me what you think of this. A shout out to a comment in a previous video. He brought to my attention, various ways of running, say, Justimon. And I've been tinkering around with the idea that he actually told me about. And, that's the kind of comment I like seeing, just share with me what your ideas are. What are you thinking you want to play it in this different style? I will see you all in the next video. Peace.